Hey guys, this is my first tutorial that I'm gonna actually voiceover of, and we're gonna go briefly over materials in Blender, what sliders you can tweak, and we're mostly gonna be covering the principled BSDF, which is gonna be there by default if you create a material in Blender. So I prepared a little scene with like 3 objects and a little bit of lighting, a bit of a lighting setup. And by the way, if you want the world to be black as here, you just click on the world settings and you put the strength to 0. So you have like a real nice contrasty image. And also what I've changed is here in the render engine, I put it to cycles, GPU, if you have a nice GPU. I put on denoising, and everything is here in the render settings, by the way, if you're looking for that. And I put on denoiser and actually put it to optics. That also highly depends on your graphics card. In my case, I'm fortunate enough to have like a NVIDIA graphics card and I can use optics, and that will drastically influence how fast your viewport is updating actually. Yeah, just some things to know. Also, to make this exactly like my scene, I went to color management and put it punchy, and the new AJX viewport transform is there on default as well. So if you just start up Blender, it's gonna be on none. And if you put it to punchy, you might need to tweak your light setting a little bit and put the lights a little bit higher. But yeah, that's everything for that, for the setup here. And I just put a simple plane on the bottom for a little bit of bounce lighting. I have this nice model of the statue here. I'm gonna put the link in the description where I got this model actually from. And then just some primitive shapes, like Suzanne with a subdivision surface modifier. Yeah, exactly. No magic, basically. So 3 objects, and they all have no material yet. So you can either go to the shading tab, which I'm already in, and you can click on new, and that will create this node setup. Another way to do this would be to go in the side panel and go onto materials, and I'm just going to demonstrate it, and you click on new. I'm not going to click it right now because I want to demonstrate something else as well, which is if you click on this object and on this object and you want to transfer this material onto the other materials that you just selected, you just click on the material that you want to transfer, and then you click on Control L, link materials, and now they all have the same material. As you can see, they have all the same node tree right here. And on the basis, you have the principled BSDF, and you have a few sliders to tweak actually. You can decide the color, whatever you like in this case, and you can decide what value that color has and how bright it's gonna be. So let's just put it to something like this. And you have full control over this, and that's pretty nice. The next slider is going to be the metallic slider, which is pretty self-explanatory, and you might want this slider to be either on 1 or 0. I mean, if you want to experiment and just do some abstract stuff, it can look pretty cool if you have it in something in between, but if you want it realistic, you might want this either on 1 or on 0. Yeah, that's how that works. And the roughness style is also pretty self-explanatory. If you put it down, you have a really reflective surface, and here it's a lot more diffuse, which now sounds pretty stupid, but if you put in with Shift A, you can search for color ramp, which is basically a visualization of the values. Here, this is 0, a value of 0, which is black, and white is a value of 1. And you can determine, either use an image texture or just an inbuilt texture from Blender that is procedural. And you can also just type something in if you already know what you're looking for. For example, noise, and then this window pops up and you can just click on whatever you need, which is pretty cool. So you can plug this in here, and right off the bat, you don't see a lot. I mean, you see a little bit. Really recommend you... No, I'm joking. If you're starting with Blender, that's completely okay. Yeah, just so you know, you get the option to a lot of shortcuts that is really handy when you're texturing actually. And if you press Ctrl T, you get these mapping coordinates, and you see it's mapped with the generated, how it's mapped on the geometry. We're gonna go into mapping into a different tutorial. For now, we can leave it at that. And now you can actually decide how much roughness you want on this object and how glossy you want it to be. If you tweak these sliders, you see it's either getting more rough, and you can also, like, if you go into the bar down here and you put it more to any side, you can either make it more reflective or not, and you can put these guys more together because right now the contrast is pretty high. Yeah, and you can tweak it to whatever you like actually, and that's pretty powerful. Something called a normal map input to put the texture into this node, and then you plug it into the normal. But in this case, if you have a black and white image and not a normal map, you would use a bump map. Which also is just basically faking detail. It's not actually adding any geometry. This is all like, it's not actually bumpy. It's just like pretending to be bumpy. Let's call it like that. And what I actually learned is that this distance value pretty much always looks better if you put it to 0.1. And then let's give it a little bit more detail just to see what we're doing. And then you can tweak the strength to your liking. And that's often the case when you just need a little bit of additional, for example, this is not really high res, but you have all these details for free in the bump map. And that's pretty handy because you don't want to go overboard and put like a million subdivisions on this just to be able to have a displacement map. Even though displacement, if you want something really close up, you probably need displacement and you need to probably go really high res. But in most cases, this is enough. This is more than enough. Yeah, that's pretty nice. The next thing I want to go over is subsurf, and that's basically how the light penetrates through the mesh. You can often see that with skin, and if you put like a flashlight in front of your hand, or see light penetrating through the ear. That's often a thing that's happening, and that's emulating this, and it looks a bit waxy. And if you put this distance, the scale slider up, because I usually put this all the way to 1, and then just tweak the scale slider, which is gonna determine how far the light penetrates into the object. And this was in combination with the bump map, this already looks really, really cool. And if you specifically want it for skin, you can put it to skin, and that's gonna look a lot different. Oh my god, this is creepy. But yeah, I usually put it to random walk, it looks really good. And then you can also tweak the anisotropy, which is basically how dense the light is gonna be scattered. You can see it's like the area where the light scatters is a lot more condensed. Then if you have it like this, it spreads more evenly. So that's just like an artistic question, however you want to however you want it to be or to look. Yeah, and that's about the subsurf, which can look really, really cool in some cases, and in some cases it looks really creepy. Okay, yeah. The next one is transmission, which is also pretty self-explanatory. If you want some ice, some glass, let's put out these maps. So just so we can see better what's happening. You can have it, of course, the roughness is determining how this looks a lot. If you want some frosted glass like this is maybe the look you're going for. Or you might want some really, really harsh glass, and you can tweak the IRR here, which is basically the index of refraction that glass has, and you can tweak these values and basically change the refraction. And in this case 1.33 is accurate. Or was it glass or water? I might need to look that up, but yeah. Maybe 0 roughness is a little bit harsh, but you get the gist. You get the gist. So something like this looks pretty nice actually. Yeah, and that's a general setup of what you can tweak with this material. You also have a sheen and coat, sheen is mostly going to be used with fabric, the roughness of this extra layer of coat. For example, car paint materials use this, and you're gonna need this if you actually want to make like a realistic car paint material, for example, which can look really cool as well. So yeah, that's these sliders, and in the next tutorials I'm gonna go over a lot more. We're gonna go over PBR material setups and texture maps and how you can plug them in and how they affect things. And you can also combine them with the already built-in texture nodes that Blender gives you. And you can just get, like, if you have mean tiling or your UVs are weird, you can always combine them with procedural materials and break up, for example, seams. And we're also going to go over how, for example, you have this model and you want to accurately place textures on this with texture maps. And you're going to run into some problems if you just apply these maps into here without a UV map. And I'm going to go over that and what a UV map is and how you set it up properly. Because this, for example, is a really high dense mesh, as you can see. And yeah, we're gonna look how to unwrap something like that, and if the way of more proceduralism in this case would be the better way to do this. Yeah. And yeah, just let me know. And we're gonna cover a lot more ground when it comes to materials, but not only materials. I'm gonna go into sculpting and into modeling as well, which is gonna be really fun. And yeah, see you next time.